Hi everybody, Mike Beer here with your Saturday DRF race of the day. The race of the day for July 30th, Saturday, is at Saratoga. It is race number 9, the Grade 2 Jim Dandy for 3-year-olds. 9 furlongs, 1 lap around the main track here at Saratoga. Field of 5 entered.
Want to view free Formulator past performances for this race? Head to the Race of the Day page at DRF.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel and bet this card with DRF Bets.
Here is that field right now. We can take a look at it. Pretty compelling matchup here. It's not, the biggest field in the world here. Another graded stakes race run here at Saratoga so far this meet that didn't draw a big group of horses, but it drew a pretty talented group of 5 here. I don't know, who's really missing of the horses who didn't run at the Haskell last weekend down at Monmouth. This is a good field of horses. 3 of the top 3-year-olds in the country have entered this Jim Dandy. Before we get into the analysis, scan that QR code that you see on your screen right now, and you can view this race on your mobile device. This is a really compelling matchup. Again, the field of 5, some really, really nice horses in here. The morning line favorite, number 2, Epicenter, is 3-2 on David Aragona's morning line. Epicenter, obviously a horse who's looking for a little redemption here. Took a couple of tough beats in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, the Derby and the Preakness. Ran really well both times. Didn't get the victory either time. Of course, he was the leading 3-year-old heading into the Triple Crown races this year, and things just didn't work out for him. Ran really well in both the Derby and the Preakness. Didn't get the job done. I'm sure his connections would like to see him come back here and run a good race. Obviously this isn't their main goal through the summer, but they'd like to see this horse run well here, I'm sure, and sort of redeem himself a little bit. But that doesn't mean it's going to be easy for him to win this race, because the 3 horses all drawn to his outside, they're all really, really good, and I don't think any of them would necessarily be a big surprise in this race. This is a really well-matched group of 3-year-olds. To start off with the time for him, U.S. pace projector before we get into the analysis here. And you can see here, time form U.S. doesn't find a lot of speed in here. Early voting is a horse who likes to be forward. He's the number 4, and they have him out there on the early lead at the pace call. That's to his advantage, to be sure. I'm not so sure that this kind of a situation, though, sort of a relatively moderate pace, I'm not so sure that this doesn't help Epicenter just as much as it does early voting. Obviously, all things being equal, in a race that's shaped like this, you'd rather be on the lead than sitting second. But Epicenter is the kind of horse who's just really handy. He showed all through the lead up to the Kentucky Derby that you could just place him wherever you needed to place him in a race. You could put him on the lead, you could sit a little bit if you had to, and he would still show up and run his race. He's not compromised by the way that this race shapes up early in the early stages. I guess the horse who would be perhaps most compromised is the 5 Zandon, another really talented 3-year-old who just doesn't have a lot of speed. They like to sit and make one run with him, but they're tuning him up for the Travers here, so I don't think they'd be too disappointed if he just made a late run into this race and couldn't get there. Let's start talking about the field here. Western Rivers down on the inside for Rudy Brissett. A horse who just feels like he's getting a lot better as a 3-year-old. He won his first. He ran well. I shouldn't say he won. He ran well in his first 2 starts as a 3-year-old down at Oaklawn. 2 races that had really good paces for him to close into. Came up just short in the first of those, got up in the second of those, actually won that race going away with a good finish. I like that performance. They came back for his next start in the Grade 3 Peter Pan over a wet track, going 9 furlongs. That's 1 turn at Belmont Park. His stablemate, We the People, was also in that race. We the People is, just a lot faster early than Western River is. We the People got to the lead on a wet track, never relinquished it, opened up on that field in the stretch and earned a 103 buyer. Western River finished 4th, beaten 10 lengths, but he actually ran really well in there. Got off to a really awkward start in there, sort of stumbled a little bit, got outrun back off the pace. He actually made a nice run into the race through the stretch with no chance to get up, but he almost got 2nd and 3rd in there. I thought he ran well in that race. He came back in a 1.5 mile allowance race at Churchill Downs. If you're running a 1.5 mile at that time of year as a 3-year-old, and you're not running the Belmont Stakes, then you're running against a bunch of bad horses. And Western River was running against a bunch of bad horses, but he looked really good winning that race. No surprise to see him handle the 1.5 mile. He's a full brother to Belmont Stakes winner Creator. But he just sat right up on the pace in there and crushed that field. That was a good performance. This is obviously way tougher for him. He's also entered in the Curlin on Friday, so we'll see which race he decides to run in. He's in pretty tough here, but he's got some upside, and he could do better as time goes on. Epicenter's the 2. He's your favorite. He's the horse to beat in here. I don't think there's any way to deny that, really, even though early voting did just beat him in the Preakness. Epicenter didn't get a great trip in that race. It's a video that we'll look at a little later, but we're going to be concentrating sort of on early voting and that replay. But Epicenter was in there. He just didn't go from the start in there, and it wound up costing him a little bit. He lost position early. He wound up way back off the pace, which, you know, he didn't need to be. And then he actually ran on very well through the stretch. He was sort of unlucky there, and that's not a knock on early voting, who also ran well in that race. But Epicenter felt like he was unlucky. He was also unlucky in the Derby, where he just ran the best race. You know, he sat the right kind of trip. He was a little close to a fast pace, but I think it was the right trip overall. He took over in the stretch. Zandon took a big run at him. Epicenter turned Zandon away in there, and then he just got run down by an impossible horse from well off the pace in Rich Strike. It was a really tough beat for this horse, who, listen, again, you know, heading into the Triple Crown Series, he was the leading 3-year-old in the country, and he's going to try to, you know, reaffirm his position at the top of this division in the Jim Dandy on Saturday. Won't be surprised if he does it. I'm sure his connections want him to run well in this race, and he's just not going to be compromised by the way this race is run. So he's probably the horse to beat in here, although that doesn't mean it's going to be easy for him. The number 3 is Tawny. He's 8-1 on the line, a little bit of an outsider in the face of horses like Epicenter and early voting and Zandon. But this horse is underrated, and he is not exactly in over his head in here. He does have to improve to beat all of those horses, assuming that they all show up. But this is a horse who, after starting out on synthetic with 2, you know, pretty nice wins, they ran him in the Risen Star. His first ever dirt start was the Risen Star against Epicenter and Zandon. He finished 5th, beaten 7+ lengths in that race, but that was a really underrated performance. Tawny Port did not get a good trip in that race and ran a lot better than it looks that day. They moved him back to dirt a couple of starts later in this race that we'll look at right now. This is the Grade 3 Lexington at Keeneland, and Tawny Port, you know, won this race pretty convincingly. I thought they used his speed to get a position, but they always kept him off the pace and a little wide throughout the running of this race. He just sat on the outside. He came for these horses around the turn, and he just stays very strongly in this race. Powers to the lead late. He's clear at the end. He's much the best in this race. This was a good performance, and it sort of earned his connections the chance to run in the Kentucky Derby, where, you know, somehow he went off at the same price as Rich Strike did. I don't know how that happened. This horse actually ran, you know, really, really well in that race. He didn't have a big excuse in there. You know, he had actually felt like he had a real look at a big piece of that purse into the last furlong or so, and he just wasn't quite good enough. But he was beaten less than 5 lengths, and he ran overall a really nice race in the Derby. They exited that race. They came for the Ohio Derby at Thistledown at the end of June. And, you know, just another good performance, another step in the right direction for him. It wasn't a fast race. There were a couple of other nice horses in there, though. White Barrio, Classic Causeway. And Tawny Port, you know, did what he tends to like to do. He sat on the outside, never that far away from those horses, and closed them down through the stretch. I like this horse. He's a good horse. I don't know if he can beat this field, but he is catching, you know, some of these horses prepping for the Travers, and I'm sure, you know, Brad Cox and company here would like to see this horse run well in here. Irad Ortiz has the return call after riding him in the Ohio Derby. Early voting is the 4. Really nice horse, only 4 starts so far. A lot of upside still in the offing for early voting. He's run well in all four starts so far. The only loss in the Wood Memorial back in April, where, listen, he ran well that day. They put him on the lead. He sort of had control of that race. He stayed on really gamely through the stretch, and it took a really good horse in Mo Donegal to run him down at the end. Only second best that day, but he ran well. And then they, you know, skipped the Derby with this horse. They pointed him for the Preakness. It was the right call for these connections, and we'll take a look at the Preakness right now. This is early voting, taking over off of a perfect trip, taking over under a confident ride, coming to the quarter pole, set down, and drifts a little bit here through the stretch. You can see him getting out a little bit at the end, but he is holding. He'll drift back in when Epicenter makes that rally up the inside at him, but he stays on very nicely in here, and he's clear under the wire. This was a good performance, a 105 Beyer speed figure, a horse who's very lightly raced, tons of upside, should be on the lead in this race, and if he's, you know, 100% fit for this race, he's gonna take some catching in this field. This is a good horse, and he still has forward to go. Number 5 is Zandon, a stablemate of early votings. Another really, really nice 3-year-old, a horse who's made very, very few mistakes in his career. His second career start, as a matter of fact, stretching out a full 3 furlongs to run against the aforementioned Mo Donegal in the Remsen, and he gave Mo Donegal all he could handle there. Really battled back gamely through the stretch to miss by a nose. Off the layoff, he caught Epicenter in the Risen Star, where Epicenter got control of a rated pace. Zandon didn't break great, came with a wide run off the turn, finished a really good 3rd, and then they came for the Bluegrass, his final prep for the Derby. We'll look at the Bluegrass right now. This was a super impressive performance from Zandon, who, you know, sort of got into some traffic early, lost position, wound up last, stayed towards the inside as they came to the stretch. Here they come through the stretch now. Flavian Pratt picks his way through horses in the stretch here, gets clear in the late stages, and this horse just explodes in the final 3/16 of a mile to close this thing down and win it going away. Really impressive, and that, had some people, talking about him perhaps going favored in the Derby. That didn't happen, but he went off at only 6-1, and he came back and he ran really well in the Derby too. He did not run as well as Epicenter did, but he still ran a really good race. Had a big look at that thing in the stretch. Epicenter turned him away, and then they both got out finished by Rich Strike, but this horse ran well in the Derby. The mile and an eighth plays right up his alley in this race. He doesn't have a lot of speed. He could be compromised by the way this race projects to be run, but this is a good horse. And even if he doesn't, come out on top in this race, if things don't go his way in here, he's going to have a big say in the outcome of the Travers, I think. He's a nice horse. Could have a big second half of the year. Really, really nice addition here, despite the short field in the Saturday race of the day, the Grade 2 Jim Dandy at Saratoga, race number 9. I'm going to go with Epicenter on top. I know he's going to be the favorite here. I feel like he's the one of the big three in here. I think he's the one who's probably going to be pretty well fit for this race. I think they're trying to win this race with Epicenter and then go on to the Travers and see if he can reaffirm his position at the top of this class. He's a good horse. He's supposed to get the right trip in here. I took him. I put Zandon second, early voting third. But yeah, it's going to be a really great matchup to watch these three horses run. I'm not sure how much of a betting race it is, but it's going to be fun to watch. Saturday at Saratoga, race number 9. It's your race of the day, the Jim Dandy. Good luck.